This is a podcast by WellHouse Church, where we take a closer look and dig a little deeper into this week's sermon. What's up, Bible nerds? We're talking about Genesis 1 and 2, so let's take a closer look. But, happy birthday to WellHouse! Today, or not today, but the day that this episode is coming out is WellHouse's 1-year birthday.
1 year anniversary of our first public gathering.
Yep.
So WellHouse technically formed July 16, 2020, because I was officially hired and Clayton was officially hired August 1st. That was our official start days.
Yes.
And we spent about 6 or 7 weeks working out some of the pieces of what we were trying to do, learning how to do the model we were trying to create. And then September 27th was our first public gathering, which is the day that this episode will come out.
September 27th.
Correct.
And I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit emotional right now.
Yes.
It feels a little crazy that it's been a year.
It does.
And so with that, thank you, Bible nerds.
Absolutely.
Because you guys are honestly what's gotten us through this.
Yep.
And all of our other listeners, right?
Well, and Clayton and I were just talking about it off air. Like, we were getting so discouraged because like what we were doing wasn't gaining traction. It wasn't growing. It wasn't doing the things that we felt and knew that it had potential to do, which was change lives and see people be restored through the power of Jesus, looking at a life of Jesus through another lens. And we were getting discouraged. And at the time of this recording, we're recording this on September 16th. But at the time of this recording, I mean, we're ecstatic about the growth we've seen and what's happening in the last month. It just almost seemed like when we were coming to the place where we were borderline ready to give up.
Yeah, about 6 months ago.
God led us into a place where we started growing and people are popping up on social and engaging. And if you are a listener to the podcast and you do not follow us on social,
please do.
Please,
you actually have no idea how much that helps.
Well, not just helps, but like that's how we communicate to you when we don't publish content. Like this last week, I lost power because of Hurricane Nicholas. And how did I update people that the podcast schedule was changing?
Instagram.
On social. Like if you that's how we communicate with you. That's how we build this community even more than it's already growing and engaging.
So please do go follow us on all our socials.
Yeah.
But we wanted to say how much we loved you guys first.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the support for the 1 year.
Yeah.
Also with the anniversary.
Yep.
We promised you guys something.
We
said on the 1 year anniversary of WellHouse's launch that we were going to release a merch line.
Yep.
And it is live today.
Yep.
Let's go. All of our merch is live today at the WellHouse Marketplace.
Yep.
You can find it on our website. There will be a link in the show notes and in the description below.
Yep.
Go peruse and find something you like.
Yep.
Find something for your partner that you think they'll like.
Yep.
And honestly, you could support us that way.
Yep.
And also get some pretty cool stuff because we come up with a lot of cool stuff.
We do have some really cool merch. And if you're only a Bible nerd and you're not a beer lover, we have a ton of cool merch on Pints of Perspectives, ton of cool merch for your spiritual formation, on practicing presence. if you're listening to us and not on YouTube, you can find all of our content at our website, mywellhouse.church, or you can go to our social medias, mywellhouse.church, and find the links in our bio.
Yep. You can find all the things everywhere that you normally find the things.
Yep, absolutely. But we have a ton of cool merch on all of our
across the
platform, plus just merch related to WellHouse Church as a brand.
Yep. T-shirts, hats, mugs,
the hoodies,
things, the works.
All the things that you would want. We've got them.
And we've also got something really cool coming for Let's Talk too.
We do.
We
can't release it yet. Yeah, we can't release it yet.
But that's coming, and so just stay up to date on our merch. This is really exciting for us, if you can't tell.
Yeah, it's exciting for us, and you're also, and this is just to say thank you to you, but you're looking at or listening to two guys that have a dream about seeing people restored through the power of Jesus in a new way that decentralizes and gets rid of a lot of the problems of contemporary evangelicalism. But we both work other jobs.
Yep.
Like we don't, like, this is not our main source of income. Like, we do this because we love it and we love Jesus and we love the vision that we're creating, and we're ecstatic that you guys have joined us on this journey.
The thing that I like to say all the time, and the thing that gets me through each day and gets me out of bed, honestly, is our listeners.
Yep.
Is the people that we engage with that is changing lives. You guys are honestly what gets me out of bed every day.
Yep. 100%.
And so we love you. Thank you. But now let's talk about your story.
Yeah. So at the time of this recording, I haven't recorded it yet, but we're starting a new series. And I haven't even decided exactly what I'm going to call it. But if you read the Bible, from the very first pages, you see this metaphor of fruit.
Yeah.
And that metaphor persists throughout the narrative in its entirety.
Yeah.
Even through Revelation 21, the fruit that is the new city, the vegetation that comes in the new creation. Paul, the fruit of the Spirit, like Jesus, the fruit of your labor, like you'll know them by their fruit. Yeah, like this metaphor persists evasively.
Yeah.
Throughout Scripture. And I just think it's really important to look at all of what that narrative is telling us.
Agreed.
I think let me say, from the tradition that we grew out of, I felt like it was dominated by Paul. Even more so than Jesus. Like, Jesus was talked about, but only in a way that was through the lens of what Paul said about Jesus.
You know, I kind of wanted to combat that, but then I started thinking about it. Literally, even when we would take communion,
we would read the Pauline version of communion.
We wouldn't read the actual Passover supper.
Yeah, we would sometimes.
Sometimes.
But by and large, you read the Pauline version of that.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, so much of the faith that I was given, I feel like was isolated to the New Testament. So when I got into seminary and I started, like, really trying to expand what I thought faith was and what it meant to be a person of faith and deconstructing and all of these things, one of the things that I said is I want to know the story better.
Yeah.
Like all of the narrative. Because there was so much of the Old Testament stories I didn't know. And then you read them and I'm like, how did I not know that story's in the Bible?
Yeah. And when you look at the full narrative, right, and I'm going to go a little bit Bible project kick. I've been on a Bible project kick.
You have been on a
I've
kick.
been on a big Bible project kick.
You have.
When you look at the full narrative, they don't use the word narrative. They talk about the Bible as a story, right? They're not
leads a unified story that leads to Jesus.
That's right. That's their mission.
Yep.
Or sort of. That is what they say all the time. And when you look at this unified story, this narrative, you will be surprised, honestly, at how many areas of your life it can be applied to.
Yep.
Because then it does kind of take on this, I don't want to say subjective, but almost kind of relative stance.
Okay, in what way?
So there are times where, the Old Testament narratives are really hard to apply to modern life. But through similes, you can get there.
Yeah, similes, metaphors, like anything that helps you understand and analyze the text. Yeah,
it can help you get there, and it can help you take the text and apply it to your life, and that's narrative theology.
Yep,
in a way,
exactly. And I did this. So this is the second time I've done this type of teaching. I did this once at another church, and I can talk about it because I own the content. But I did this once again at another church, and I called it Hydrate. And I spent 8 weeks, and I tracked the water metaphor throughout Scripture.
So good.
So good. It began with Noah and went all the way throughout the New Testament, Jesus walking on water, Jesus calming the storm, just following this metaphor of water. That's what we're doing again with this series. Now, honestly, not really sure where it's going to end. That one I knew because it had a goal in mind. But this one, it's such a pervasive metaphor.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere.
And you cannot leave out the pervasiveness, if that's the word you're going to use, of wine too.
Correct.
Right.
Well, because it's the fruit of the vine. That's the Old Testament narrative for, or Old Testament, usage for to talk about wine or grape,
which is literally
everywhere.
Yes, every book of the Bible you can find almost you can find a reference to wine.
Yep, almost.
There is fruit everywhere.
It's everywhere, and so. Let's start diving into this. So today we're going to talk about chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1.
Sounds like we're starting an audiobook. Chapter 1.
Yeah, exactly. Chapter 1 is really interesting to me. So also, if you are a social media person, you should also follow me and Clayton on our own personal ones, because we post a lot of stuff there, especially me, like Bible-related content that never makes it to the WellHouse page. I was reading Genesis. I'm reading through Genesis right now. And the other day I posted on my story, I'm reading Genesis 1 through 5 today. If anybody wants to join the conversation. Lots of people did. I was shocked actually at how many people wanted to join that conversation.
That's awesome.
But one of the things that I noticed is in chapter 1, God says 7 times that what he made is good.
Yeah.
In Hebrew numerology, 7 is the number for perfection.
Yeah.
What God has made is perfectly good.
Yep.
3 times in the narrative, the word for fruit is used in chapter 1.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you have it here in verse 11. Then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees, and every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed on it. So there are 3 sections throughout the narrative where fruit is used. That's number 1. Number 2 is when God makes the animals in verse 22, and the text says, God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply.
And then with man.
And then with man.
So
now,
biblical numerology.
I bring that up for another reason. Hebrew numerology, what's the number for 3?
It's the Trinity.
It's the divine number.
Yeah.
It is the number that symbolizes divinity.
Yeah.
Now it's the word is used more, but 3 sections of the narrative of the 7 days, 3 of them contain the idea of fruit.
Yeah. I'd never put all of that together. But wow, that's a
really interesting starting place.
It is. And that's where the narrative opens up. That's where it begins, giving you some sort of idea. And ancient readers would have understood this in a way that we, so far disconnected, can't. They would have understood that fruit carries some level of divinity, as well as all creation.
Possibly. I don't want to totally impose that upon them. I mean, that may be an explanation for why the fruit metaphor is so pervasive. I don't want to fully push that on them because I'm not 100% confident. But the reason I set that up, and specifically this in chapter 1 about man, the third usage of fruit is really important to me because verse 26 says, then God said, let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. 27. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. It should not be lost on us that, number 1, the first command of God is one of fruitfulness. And number 2, it should not be lost on us that God's first command is through the lens of a fruit metaphor.
Yeah.
That should set up for you, like that piece, that the very first thing God ever said is be fruitful and multiply, and in that used a metaphor of fruit, of production, of growth, of creation.
Yeah.
And here's why I say that, because this never occurred to me before. Genesis chapter 3. What do they do wrong? They eat a fruit.
They eat a fruit that God designated them not to eat.
Yeah. So chapter 2 is the breakdown of this understanding of the fruit. You can have all the fruit you want. Just as I've commanded you to be fruitful and multiply to a plenty, you can have all of this. But there's one fruit you can't have.
The forbidden fruit.
Correct. And then chapter 3 is this narrative of the forbidden fruit, which also in chapter 3, that's going to be week 2, but in chapter 3, the fruit bearing is diminished in creation by the curse.
Yeah.
The earth will now bear thorns and thistles, things that choke out growth.
Yeah. And also, Bible nerds, you're Bible nerds, so I hope you know this. It's not an apple.
It's not an apple. More than likely, it's something close to a pomegranate.
Yeah.
More than likely.
It's something, that fruit does not exist anymore. It's not an apple.
Now, the reason I bring all that up and set all that up for you God establishes in the narrative that something important and impactful is happening by setting up that this is good, that there's 7 of these, so it's perfectly good, and that there's this 3 of this fruit narrative, that something about it is divine. Then we get to chapter 2.
Can I walk something?
Go ahead.
For a second?
Go ahead.
I was trying to just kind of work through what is fruit. And you know that old explanation for the Trinity that's honestly horrible about the egg?
Yeah, the horrible shell, the yolk, and the white.
It's not horrible, but it could be better.
Well, it's not great.
For it to be a classified fruit, it has to have seeds. It has to have some sort of meat, and it has to have a skin.
Yep.
It's divided up into 3 parts. Like, I know that's not great, but there's something about that is...
You could. I mean, what do you do with... I mean, yeah.
It's not fantastic.
Yeah.
But...
I don't think Trinitarian metaphors are super helpful.
They're not.
Because they always break down at some level.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring this up about fruit, because here something stands out to me about this. Genesis 1, you have this setup about fruit. Genesis 2, you're introduced into this fruit in the fullness, right? And God says things like, hey, you can have all this fruit you want, but there's one fruit I don't want you to eat. Okay? Also, we didn't highlight it here. We highlighted on all of the, most of the other podcasts, but that whole being made in the image and likeness of God thing.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's a big deal.
Being in pursuit of divine likeness is a big deal throughout Genesis 1. Being in pursuit of divine likeness is a big deal throughout the rest of the narrative.
Yep.
Do you remember what Satan's temptation to Eve is?
You could be like God.
Like God.
Yeah. That cannot be missed.
It can't.
That is a big deal.
You will be like God, knowing good from evil.
That's right.
That's what the serpent says to her.
And honestly, when you think about that statement, if you really break down that statement, of that is what Satan is trying to get Eve to understand, is you will be like God and understand the difference between good and evil. He doesn't actually say it that way, I don't think. But
no, that's
he
exactly
says
what he
you
says.
You will be like God. Does he make the statement about knowing the difference between good and
yes.
evil? That blows my mind because she doesn't know evil.
Correct.
She has no experience of evil until she disobeys.
Correct.
It's just... why does she want to know? That's the question that's always lingered with me.
Well, look, I think it goes back to anything and everything we do. We have a legitimate need that we meet with an illegitimate means. She wants to be like God. She recognizes that language. But she's going about achieving it in a way that's unhealthy. The thing that I see and recognize about this narrative is that God set something up for good. Yeah. Whatever is carried in the metaphor of fruit, and we're going to spend the next however many weeks until I have to start the Advent series working it out. What does this metaphor of fruit carry with us? Yep. Whatever it does, it's so powerful. And we're going to talk about it next week too, but the reason that God puts a flaming sword yielded by a cherubim in front of the entrance to the Garden of Eden in the east is because he says they will come back and eat the fruit of the tree of life and live forever. Yeah. What God meant for good, what humanity thought for good, Satan, the serpent, distorted and tempted us with our own innately good desire to be like God. And here's the thing I want you to walk away from. At least through this point of the narrative, I'm going to dive it out more, looking specifically at chapter 3 next week, but this is just kind of the whole setup and foundation. God didn't cast you from the Garden of Eden without giving you an alternative to life. Because as much as we guilt ourselves and shame ourselves for our sin, I believe, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that Eve's intention was good.
Yeah.
She was in pursuit of divine likeness. She was tempted in the wrong way and made a bad decision that God definitely told her not to make. But she was in pursuit of something wholesome, being like God. And then, immediately, she felt shame. Adam felt shame. And so they hide themselves. They guard themselves. And when God comes to them, they blame each other. Listener, as God has set up in the beginning of the narrative, that fruitfulness is divine and that creation and the things that come from creation are perfect and good. And of that fruitfulness, God has applied that metaphor to humanity. Outside of being made in his image, outside of being in his likeness, outside of being commanded to pursue his likeness, outside of all of that, the fruit metaphor tells me that you and the things that God has made are good. And we mess up. But I genuinely believe that the way the narrative is set up, 100% of me, I got no reservations about this. Eve's attempts at divine likeness may have been wrong, but she was good. She was trying to do something good, being in pursuit of divine likeness. If you are listening to this today, you are good. You may make mistakes being in pursuit of divine likeness because you're not perfect, but that's why God sent one that was perfect in Jesus, because you can't get there. You can't be that. But your pursuit of divine likeness, I believe this to my core. We're like Evel Knievel. We get paid for the attempt. Pursuing divine likeness, sometimes we make bad decisions. And those bad decisions cost us. And they cost Jesus his life so that he might offer us life in order that we could live out the commands of Genesis 1, being in genuine fellowship with God the Father and being fruitful and multiplying and filling the earth with pockets of heaven.